My name is Winifred Quimby, though most everyone who's known me long enough just calls me Winnie. The reflection that greets me from my bedroom mirror these days is that of a woman who has seen 75 Alabama summers come and go. The lines around my eyes are a roadmap of laughter and a few hard-won tears, and my hair has long since surrendered to a soft, silvery white. For most of my life, I wasn't just Winnie. I was a financial advisor at the First Merchant Bank of Tuscaloosa. It was a solid, dependable career, one that taught me the quiet language of numbers and the loud, often painful, stories they told about people's lives. I saw fortunes built on discipline and dynasties crumble under the weight of ego. My own life has been a testament to that discipline. My apartment is my sanctuary, a two-bedroom haven overlooking the gentle green of Riverwalk Park. It's not grand, but every object within its walls holds a piece of my story. The watercolors are by local artists I met at the Saturday market. The worn armchair by the window is where I read to my son, Webster, when he was small, and on the mantelpiece sits a photo of my husband, Robert, his face crinkling into a smile under a hard hat. He was an engineer, strong and kind, and the world felt a little less steady on its axis when he was taken from us in a car accident. Webster was only 11 then. Raising a boy alone on the modest salary of a bank teller wasn't easy, but Robert had left us a life insurance policy. It wasn't a king's ransom, but it was a lifeline. It allowed me to take a year off to finish my finance degree, a decision that changed the trajectory of our lives. I invested the remainder of the policy with the same caution and care I would later advise my clients to use, a diversified portfolio of bonds and index funds, nothing flashy, just slow, steady growth. The house was paid off, a blessing I thanked Robert for every single day. 5 years after he passed, the real estate market in Tuscaloosa began to climb. I sold our home, invested the profits wisely, and moved us into this comfortable apartment. When Webster announced he was marrying Pearl, I doubled down, working longer hours to help them with the down payment on a small, respectable house in the Forest Lake neighborhood. The memory of my son's face, alight with pride as he held those keys, is etched into my heart. It was a price I was more than willing to pay. Their daughter, Daisy, arrived 2 years later, a brilliant spark of light in all our lives. She had Robert's inquisitive eyes and a smile that could melt the frostiest of hearts. I tried to be a present grandmother without being an intrusive one, coming when called, helping when asked. Our weekends together when she was small were filled with the scent of blueberry muffins, stories of constellations viewed from my small balcony, and the quiet comfort of simply being together. Webster grew into an ambitious man. He excelled in his studies and climbed the corporate ladder with a single-minded focus. But somewhere along the way, I felt a certain softness in him had hardened. His goals became relentlessly material, a faster car, a bigger title, a more prestigious address. Pearl, his wife, was a perfect match for this new version of my son. She was driven, with a polished exterior and a smile that rarely reached her eyes. She managed a high-end furniture store, elegant home, where she had a knack for convincing people that their happiness depended on a sofa they couldn't afford. I never voiced my reservations about her. It was Webster's life to live, his choices to make. A year ago, I retired. My financial health was robust, a solid pension from the bank, Social Security, and the carefully managed investments I'd nurtured for decades, bolstered by a small inheritance from Robert's childless sister. I found myself in a position of security I had never dreamed of, and it sparked a question. What was all this for? My niece protested at the thought of extensive travel, and my old, story-filled furniture suited me far better than anything new and shiny. That's when the idea took root, a quiet seed of generosity that quickly grew into a full-blown plan. The Webster's home in Forest Lake was feeling the strain of a growing family. Daisy was a teenager now, needing space for her books, her art, her boundless curiosity. The neighborhood, once so full of promise, was beginning to show its age. I wanted more for them. I wanted more for Daisy. I kept the plan to myself, a secret treasure I polished in the quiet hours of the evening. It felt too personal, too monumental, to share with anyone, even my dearest friend, Evelyn. I began my research, poring over real estate listings in Tuscaloosa. Highland Park was out of reach, a bastion of old money and sprawling estates. But Northport, with its reputable schools and charming, tree-lined streets, seemed perfect. I spent weekends driving through its neighborhoods, imagining my family living in one of the lovely brick homes. One bright Monday morning, I called Mara Kincaid, a realtor Evelyn had sworn by. "She's as honest as the day is long, Winnie," Evelyn had said. "She won't sell you a house with a history of termites and a prayer." "Premier Real Estate," Mara speaking, a cheerful voice answered. I explained my mission, to find a house for my son's family, and outlined my budget and desired areas. "Well, how wonderful." Mara's voice was warm with genuine surprise. "It's not every day a parent makes a gift like this." "That's incredibly generous of you, Mrs. Quimby." We met the next day. I wore my navy pantsuit, my old armor for important meetings, wanting to project an air of quiet competence. Mara was a whirlwind of energy in her 40s, with a shock of red hair and a smile that could sell a house on its own. Her office walls were a gallery of happy families posing in front of their new homes. "So, Mrs. Quimby," she began, her fingers flying across her laptop keyboard, "let's drill down into what you're looking for." We spent an hour mapping out the ideal home, for bedrooms, a yard for Daisy, a study for Webster. I didn't want a brand new build, with their cookie-cutter designs and questionable materials, nor did I want a house so old it would be a constant source of repairs. I wanted to be a home, I explained, a place with good bones, where my granddaughter can make memories that will last her a lifetime. Mara nodded, her expression thoughtful. "I understand completely. Quality, neighborhood, a sense of permanence." She looked up from her screen. "Just one question. Does your son know about this?" "No," I admitted. I wanted to be a surprise. The truth was, I didn't want Webster and Pearl's ever-expanding desires to color my decision. I knew them too well. Mara looked thoughtful. "I always recommend that the future residents be part of the selection process. After all, they're the ones who will have to live there." "I understand," I said. "But I'd like to find a few strong candidates first. Then, we can look together." She agreed, though a flicker of doubt crossed her face. Perhaps she was worried about a deal falling through if they didn't like my choice. The following weekend was a blur of properties. One was too dark, shaded by ancient oaks. Another sat on a street that was far too busy for my peace of mind. A third was nearly perfect, but a telltale dampness in the basement gave me pause. "A potential drainage issue," Mara said diplomatically. I shook my head. I wouldn't saddle my son with immediate, costly repairs. The next week, we viewed 5 more. One, on a quiet street named Magnolia Drive, captured my imagination. It was a classic 2-story colonial with stately white columns, a spacious kitchen, and a beautifully maintained backyard with a stone patio. For bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, a first-floor study for Webster, and a bonus room that would make a perfect art studio for Daisy. "What do you think?" Mara asked as we stood on the driveway. "I like it," I said, my heart giving a little flutter. "But I'll need a thorough inspection. Roof, foundation, everything." "Of course," she said. "I insist on it." That night, I sat with my financial statements spread across the dining table. The house on Magnolia Drive was at the very top of my budget. It would mean tightening my own belt significantly, foregoing the little luxuries I'd planned for my retirement. But then I pictured Daisy, her face lit with joy, in that sunny bonus room. Wasn't this what I had worked for? To provide a better life for my family? The next day, I invited Webster to lunch at the Southern Table, a quiet restaurant where we could talk without being overheard. "What's the occasion, Mom?" he asked, a hint of suspicion in his voice. He was always wary of my gestures, as if my love came with strings attached. "Can't a mother just take her son to lunch?" I smiled, then decided to get straight to the point. Webster, I want to do something for you and your family. He tensed. What is it? I want to buy you a new house. A bigger one, in a better neighborhood. He stared at me as if I'd just sprouted a second head. A house, he whispered. You're serious? Completely. I've even started looking. There's a beautiful place on Magnolia Drive. For bedrooms, a lovely yard. Wait, Mom, he held up his hands, a gesture of protest that didn't quite match the acquisitive gleam in his eyes. That's too much. We can't accept that. You can, and you will, I said firmly. This is what I want to do, Webster. I want to know that Daisy has a safe, beautiful place to grow up. That you and Pearl have the space you deserve. But your retirement, your savings. I've run the numbers, I assured him. I'll be perfectly comfortable. He shook his head, a purely symbolic gesture now. I'll have to talk to Pearl, of course. Of course, I agreed. In fact, I'd like for you both to see the house on Magnolia Drive this weekend. He agreed, and though we moved on to other topics, I saw his gaze drift away periodically. He was already mentally moving in. That Saturday, we all met Mara at the house. Pearl's excitement was palpable the moment we pulled up to the curb. Oh, my goodness, Webster, look at those columns. And the lawn, she breathed, squeezing his arm. This is another world. Inside, Pearl gushed over the granite countertops and the master bathroom's jacuzzi tub. Webster, more reserved, gave appreciative nods as he inspected the two-car garage and the handsome study. So, what do you think? I asked as we gathered on the back patio. It's incredible, Winnie, Pearl said, using my nickname for the first time in years. I can't believe it! Seriously, Mom, this is too generous, Webster said, but his eyes were shining. We don't deserve this. Nonsense, I countered. You're my family. Who else would I do this for? On the drive home, their conversation was a whirlwind of plans for furniture and room assignments. Listening to their happy chatter, I felt a deep sense of satisfaction. It had been a long time since I'd seen my son so animated. To my surprise, Webster called the next day. He and Pearl, he explained, wanted to see a few more houses, just for comparison's sake. The Magnolia Drive house is wonderful, Mom, he said, but since you're being so generous, we want to be absolutely certain it's the right one. I agreed, a small, uneasy feeling fluttering in my stomach. Was this the beginning of a slippery slope? But how could I refuse? It would be their home, after all. The following weekend became a parade of properties. With each new house, their expectations grew. A gourmet kitchen, once a luxury, was now a necessity. A 3-car garage, previously unthought of, was now highly desirable. The budget I had so carefully calculated began to feel like a quaint suggestion rather than a firm limit. What about the Highland Park area? Pearl asked casually over coffee after a long day of viewings. I saw a few listings there that looked amazing. I sighed. Pearl, that neighborhood is well beyond my budget. I've already stretched myself as far as I can. But you sold those tech stocks last year, didn't you? She said with a bright, innocent smile. Webster mentioned you did very well. I looked at my son, startled. I didn't recall sharing the specific details of my portfolio with him. Yes, I did, I said evenly. And that money is already allocated for this house. Well, maybe it could be allocated a little differently, she purred. For Daisy's sake. The schools in Highland Park are the best in the state. A spark of irritation flickered within me, but I smothered it. I decided on direct honesty. Listen to me, both of you, I said, my voice gentle but firm. I am doing this from my heart, but my resources are not infinite. I am offering you a home that is a world away from what you have now. I can give you a beautiful home, but I cannot buy you a palace. Pearl looked as though I'd slapped her. Webster quickly tried to smooth things over. Mom, of course, we understand. And we're so grateful. Aren't we, Pearl? She forced a tight smile. Of course, Winnie. I'm sorry if I came across as ungrateful. The next day, Mara called with exciting news. A house on Wisteria Lane had just hit the market. It was, in her words, an absolute gem and perfect for your family. It's a bit above the original budget, she said, but I think it's worth a look. Places like this don't last long. We all met there that afternoon. Me, Webster, Pearl, and this time Daisy, whom they'd pulled out of school early for the occasion. The house on Wisteria Lane was breathtaking. It was larger and more architecturally distinguished than the Magnolia Drive house, with a circular driveway and a beautifully landscaped yard that included a swimming pool. "This is it," Pearl whispered as we stepped into the soaring, two-story foyer. Webster's eyes were practically glittering. He was already imagining hosting company parties here. Daisy was ecstatic. "Grandma, look," she cried, running into a large second-floor bedroom with a charming bay window. "I could put my telescope right here. I could see the whole sky." Her unadulterated joy was a powerful tonic. Maybe this was worth it. "The price?" Webster asked Mara, his voice hushed with reverence. She named a figure that was a full 15% higher than my absolute maximum. I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. This would mean liquidating stocks I had planned to live on for the next decade. "Mom," Webster turned to me, his eyes pleading. He looked like a little boy again, staring at the most wonderful toy in the world. My gaze drifted to Daisy, who was excitedly describing to Pearl how she would arrange her new room. "Let me see what I can do," I said, my voice barely a whisper. That night was a long one, spent hunched over spreadsheets. Selling the stock, cashing out the bond, it was possible. But it would mean a life of careful scrimping for me. No more spontaneous trips to the coast, no more little indulgences. Was it worth it? I looked at Robert's photograph on the mantel. He would have told me to take care of myself. But then I saw Daisy's radiant face in my mind's eye. Yes, I decided. It was worth it. The closing process was a month-long whirlwind of paperwork. Mara was a godsend, meticulously guiding us through every step, insisting on a comprehensive inspection that she attended personally. "The house is solid," the inspector, a grizzled man named Mr. Patterson, reported. "Good bones, well maintained." But with a property of this value, I always recommend the most comprehensive insurance policy you can get. Covers everything, foundation included. I nodded. It was a no-brainer. The day we signed the papers was a beautiful, clear morning in April. At the title company's office, I signed document after document, the pen feeling heavy in my hand as I transferred the ownership of a home worth nearly $1 million to my son. "Wait," Webster said when the insurance documents were presented. "Why is this premium so high?" "It's the comprehensive policy Mr. Patterson recommended," I explained. "It covers structural issues, like the foundation." "Mom," Webster said, his voice low and confidential, "that's an extra $5,000 a year." The inspector said the house is in excellent shape. We don't need to throw money away on problems that don't exist. The basic policy is fine. I looked to Mara for support, but she gave a slight shrug. It wasn't her decision to make. Pearl was intently studying her manicure. "All right," I conceded, a flicker of unease disturbing my resolve. I signed for the basic coverage. "Thanks, Mom." Webster patted my hand, his attention already elsewhere. When the last paper was signed, Mara handed the keys to Webster. "Congratulations," she said, then turned to me. "You've given your family an incredible gift, Mrs. Quimby." I nodded, feeling a strange mix of exhilaration and anxiety. It was done. When Webster enveloped me in a rare, heartfelt hug and whispered, "Thank you, Mom," the anxiety melted away, replaced by the warm glow of a mother's love. The move took 2 weeks. I was there every day, wrapping dishes, organizing boxes, feeling a quiet satisfaction in my role as helper. Pearl, however, was strangely distant, spending most of her time at the new house, directing painters and choosing curtains, while Daisy and I did the bulk of the packing at the old one. "I've ordered a new living room set," Pearl announced one afternoon. "Our old things just won't do in a house like this." "But Mom, our sofa is perfectly fine," Daisy protested. "And Grandma spent so much on the house itself." You're a child. Daisy, you don't understand, Pearl said dismissively. Presentation is everything. What would our guests think? Daisy shot me a look, but I just offered a small shrug. It was their house now. Finally, moving day arrived, followed swiftly by the housewarming party. Webster insisted on a grand affair. This is a milestone, Mom, he'd said. We need to celebrate it properly. The guest list swelled to over 50 people, colleagues, clients, and friends. They hired a catering company and a florist. Don't worry about a thing, Webster assured me when I expressed concern over the extravagance. This is on us. Our way of christening our new life. The day of the party was warm and sunny. I arrived early, and Daisy immediately pulled me upstairs. Grandma, come see my room. It was perfect, just as she had imagined, with her telescope poised in the bay window. It's all because of you, she said, throwing her arms around me. I love you so much. I love you too, my sweet girl, I whispered, my eyes misting over. In that moment, every sacrifice felt worthwhile. As the guests arrived, the house filled with noise and laughter. Webster was the proud host, leading tours and beaming with pride. Pearl, resplendent in a new silk dress, accepted compliments on her exquisite taste. I was introduced over and over again, and this is my mother, Winifred. She made all this possible. Each introduction was met with murmurs of admiration for my generosity. I found a quiet corner in the living room, feeling like a spectator at my own party. Webster was occupied with his boss, and Pearl was flitting about, a perfect hostess. Only Daisy checked on me, bringing me a glass of iced tea and chattering about her friends. Around 7, Webster tapped a glass with a spoon. Friends, a toast, he announced, raising his champagne flute. To our beautiful new home, and to the most incredible woman I know, my mother, Winifred Quimby, without whom none of this would be possible. A sea of faces turned toward me, glasses held high. I smiled, feeling a blush creep up my neck. Thank you, Mom, Webster said, his eyes meeting mine across the room. This house is the greatest gift we could ever imagine. To Winifred, someone shouted, and the room echoed with the toast. Later, as the party began to wind down, I decided it was time to leave. I found Webster in the kitchen. I'm heading out, honey. It was a lovely party. Leaving so soon? He asked. Stay a little longer. No, I'm tired, I said, kissing his cheek. He walked me to the door, and as I was about to step outside, I remembered. Oh, my baking dish. I left my blueberry muffin pan in the kitchen. Don't worry about it, Mom, he said. I'll bring it by tomorrow. No, it'll just take a second. I need it for the morning. I slipped back into the house, my soft-soled shoes making no sound on the hardwood floor. As I neared the kitchen, I heard voices, Webster, Pearl, and their remaining friends. I paused at the doorway, not wanting to interrupt, when I heard my name. Winnie looked like she was about to weep during that toast. Pearl's voice, slurred slightly with wine, drifted out. Honestly, you'd think she was bestowing a holy relic upon us. A ripple of condescending laughter followed. Easy, honey, Webster said, but there was no force in his voice. She did give us the bulk of her life savings. And what else was she going to do with it? Pearl retorted. Take up skydiving? At least this way, she gets to see it put to good use. More laughter. Weren't you worried she'd expect to move in? A man's voice asked. Oh, please, Pearl scoffed. Winnie's far too proud for that. She'd rather live on cat food than admit she needs help. Besides, we made it pretty clear that wasn't an option. How? A woman asked. The usual, Pearl said with a theatrical sigh. We need our space. Daisy needs quiet for her studies. Blah, blah, blah. The truth is, the last thing I need is an old woman hovering over my shoulder, judging my every move in my own house. The blood drained from my face. An old woman. And can you believe, Webster added, his voice joining the conspiratorial tone, she wanted us to get that ridiculously expensive insurance? As if the house were about to crumble. I had to practically wrestle the pen out of her hand. Smart move, the man said. That $5,000 is much better spent on the new patio furniture Pearl picked out. Exactly, Webster exclaimed. I stumbled back, my hand brushing against a vase on a console table. It wobbled, and I caught it just in time, but the small sound was enough. Who's there? Webster called out. Taking a deep breath, I stepped into the kitchen, my posture as straight as I could make it. I'm sorry, I said, my voice surprisingly steady. I forgot my baking pan. I pointed to the ceramic dish on the counter. An icy silence fell over the room. Pearl froze, her glass halfway to her lips. Webster looked like a child caught with his hand in the cookie jar. Their friends suddenly found the floor fascinating. Mom, Webster started, but I held up a hand. Don't, I said softly. I heard everything. You misunderstood, Pearl said quickly. We were just joking. Were you? I met her gaze. It didn't sound like a joke to me. I picked up my pan and turned to leave. Mom, wait, Webster said, reaching for my arm. I turned back to face him. Wait for what, Webster? To discuss what a burden the old woman who bought you this house is? Or to celebrate how cleverly you saved money on the insurance I recommended? He dropped his hand. You were eavesdropping. No. I came for my property and happened to overhear the truth. Pearl set her glass down with a sharp click. Her face hardened. You know what, Winnie? Yes, you heard the truth. We are grateful for the house, but that doesn't give you the right to control our lives. Pearl, Webster warned. No, let her hear it, she snapped, her eyes flashing. We're tired of the constant advice, the silent judgments. Thank you for the house, truly. But it's our house now. We will live in it our way. The venom in her voice was more shocking than the words themselves. I have never tried to control you, I said quietly. But you wanted to, she shot back. You thought this gift would buy you influence, that we'd be so eternally grateful we'd hang on your every word. Pearl, that's enough, Webster said, but he made no move to stop her. She rounded on him. What? You've said the same things. That she uses Daisy to manipulate you, that she's always trying to tell us what to do. Webster looked from me to his wife, trapped. I saw the moment he made his choice. Mom, he sighed, unable to meet my eyes, maybe we do just need a little space to settle in. Maybe it would be best if you didn't come by for a few weeks. I looked at my son, the boy I had raised, the man for whom I had sacrificed, and I saw a stranger. Speak plainly, Webster, I said, my voice calm. What do you want? We just need some time, he mumbled. Without me, I finished for him. Just for a little while. Pearl snorted. Oh, for heaven's sake, Webb. Just tell her. Thanks for the house, Winnie. But we don't need a burden like you hanging around anymore. I stood there, clutching my baking pan like a shield, and felt something inside me finally and irrevocably break. It wasn't my heart. That had been bruised before. It was the last, shimmering thread of illusion that my son was, deep down, the boy I had loved without condition. I see, I said. In that case, I won't trouble you again. I turned and walked out of the kitchen, feeling the weight of their gazes on my back. At the front door, I paused, but didn't turn around. I hope you'll be very happy in this house, I said to the empty hallway. I truly do. I walked out into the cool night air and closed the door softly behind me. No one followed. In my car, I placed the baking pan on the passenger seat and looked back at the house, blazing with light and life. The house I had bought. The house where I was a burden. Tears streamed down my face as I drove home, but I didn't bother to wipe them away. The 15-minute drive felt like a journey across a barren wasteland. My apartment, usually a comfort, felt cold and empty. I looked at my reflection in the hall mirror, an old woman with red-rimmed eyes and a face etched with a pain so deep it felt ancient. A burden, I whispered to the woman in the mirror. I sat in my armchair all night, fully clothed, the ceramic pan still in my lap. As the first pale light of dawn crept through the window, a new resolve began to form in the hollow space inside me. This was the last time. This was the last time I would allow them to hurt me. My life, what was left of it, would be my own. The morning after the party was gray and heavy, mirroring the weight in my chest. I made a pot of strong black tea, the way my mother had taught me, a remedy for all of life's ailments. The phone rang, and Daisy's name flashed on the screen. My hand hovered over it, but I couldn't answer. What could I possibly say? The phone went to voicemail. A moment later, a message chimed. "Grandma, it's me," Daisy's small voice whispered. "I don't know what happened yesterday, but I know something's wrong. I just wanted to say, I love you." The tears I thought were all spent came anew. How could this child possess more grace and wisdom than both her parents combined? I texted her back, "I love you too, sweetheart. Always. Don't worry about me. I'm fine." The next few days were a blur of hollow routines. On the third day, my friend Evelyn called, her voice sharp with concern. "Winnie, what on earth is going on? You've been ignoring my calls." I couldn't pretend with Evelyn. "They kicked me out. Evie," I said, the words tasting like ash. "After everything, they kicked me out of their lives. That ungrateful little." Evelyn's voice sizzled. "And Webster?" "He let her." "He agreed with her," I said, the bitterness fresh. "I'm coming over," she declared. 20 minutes later, she was at my door with a bottle of Chardonnay and a chocolate cake. Her hug was fierce and wordless, and it was exactly what I needed. "You know, Winnie," she said later, as we sat on my balcony in the middle of the afternoon, "maybe this is for the best." "How can losing my son be for the best?" "You didn't lose him," she said gently. "You lost an illusion. Now you're free. You can finally start living for yourself." "At 75? Why not?" she grinned. "It's the perfect age to stop giving a damn what other people think." Her words, blunt as they were, planted a seed. The next day, I took a long walk in Riverwalk Park. As I sat on a bench watching the ducks, an elderly gentleman leaning on a cane approached me. "Mrs. Quimby?" he asked. "Winifred Quimby?" I looked up into the kind, familiar eyes of Orville Pye, the retired lawyer who had handled Robert's estate all those years ago. "Mr. Pye," I smiled. "What a small world." "Please call me Orville." He sat beside me. "I live just over there now. The old house got too big after Margaret passed." We fell into easy conversation. He asked about Webster, and when I told him about the new house, my voice faltered. "Forgive me for being blunt," he said, his gaze gentle, "but you seem troubled." Something in his quiet empathy made me open up. I told him the whole sordid story. He listened without interruption, his expression a mixture of sympathy and professional gravity. "It's a tragic story, Winifred, but not an uncommon one," he said when I finished. "Money can corrode families faster than rust." "It wasn't about the money," I insisted. "It was about respect." "You're right," he agreed. "And that is the true tragedy." We talked for nearly 2 hours. He spoke of his grandchildren, his books, and his passion for growing orchids. When we parted, he invited me to see his collection and suggested we meet in the park again the next day. I agreed, surprised by the lightness I felt for the first time in days. A week after the party, the phone rang. It was Webster, his voice tight with panic. "Mom, you have to help. It's the house." I sat down, my hand gripping the edge of the kitchen table. "What's wrong, Webster?" "The foundation," he said, his words tumbling out. "There are cracks." An engineer came. Something about unstable soil, erosion. He said the house is structurally unsound. "We might have to evacuate." I was silent, a cold, clear memory surfacing. Mr. Patterson, the inspector, strongly advising comprehensive insurance. "What about the insurance?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "It doesn't cover it," he choked out. "The basic policy, if we'd just gotten the extended coverage you wanted." He trailed off. "The one I advised," I finished for him, my voice flat. "Yes, Mom, you were right, I was an idiot," he pleaded. "But we need help. The repairs will cost a fortune." "We don't have it." A small, dark part of me felt a grim satisfaction. But it was quickly overshadowed by the image of Daisy, her face alight with joy in her new room. "What do you want from me, Webster?" "Money, Mom," he begged. "Your savings, your investments. You could take a loan against your apartment. Anything. We can't lose this house." I listened to his desperate pleading, and the words echoed in my mind. "We don't need a burden like you anymore." "Webster," I said, my voice quiet but firm. "I cannot help you." "What?" he sputtered. "What do you mean you can't? The money I had is in that house. What little is left is what I have to live on." "But Mom, we'll be homeless." "No, you won't," I corrected him. "You still have the old house. You haven't sold it yet, have you?" A choked silence. "We can't go back there," he finally said. "Not after this." "I see," I said. "You're only sorry now because you need something from me. If that foundation were solid, I would never have heard from you again." "Am I wrong?" He didn't answer. "Please, Mom," he tried a new tactic. "Do it for Daisy. She loves her room. Do not use my granddaughter as a pawn." "Webster," my voice turned to ice. "That is beneath even you." "Then what?" he cried, his voice breaking. "I'll apologize. Pearl will apologize. We'll do anything. You can move in with us, we have plenty of room." The bitter irony of it made me want to laugh. "Listen to me very carefully, Webster," I said. "I will not give you one more dollar. This problem is yours to solve. You are a grown man. Figure it out." "You can't do this," he shouted. "I'm your son." "Yes, you are," I said, a wave of sadness washing over me. "And I have loved you my entire life. But love does not mean allowing myself to be used. That is over." "You will regret this," he threatened. "Perhaps," I said softly. "But I doubt I'll regret it as much as I regret giving everything I had to people who saw me as nothing more than a burden." I ended the call. My hands were shaking, but my spirit felt steady. The phone rang again and again. I silenced it. A short while later, there was a frantic pounding on my door. I looked through the peephole. It was Webster, his face contorted with rage. "Mom, I know you're in there. Open this door." I walked away from the door and sat in my armchair, waiting for the storm to pass. After 20 minutes, the pounding stopped. My phone buzzed with a text. It was from Orville. "How about a walk this evening? The sunset promises to be lovely." I smiled, a real, genuine smile. "I'd love that," I typed back. For the first time in my 75 years, I felt truly, profoundly free. Free from the weight of expectation, free from the chains of guilt. Evelyn was right. My life wasn't over. It was just beginning. In the weeks that followed, a new rhythm established itself. Webster and Pearl, facing reality, moved back to their cramped house in Forest Lake and put the crumbling mansion on Wisteria Lane up for sale at a catastrophic loss. The stress fractured their already fragile marriage. Daisy, however, became my constant. Her father, humbled and perhaps finally seeing the error of his ways, had given his blessing for her to visit me. She came twice a week, her bright presence a balm to my soul. We baked, we talked, we watched old movies. She was my bridge back to the family I loved, without the toxicity that had nearly destroyed it. And then there was Orville. Our walks in the park blossomed into dinners, trips to the local theater, and long, comfortable silences on his balcony, surrounded by his prized orchids. He saw me not as a mother, not as a widow, not as a financial resource, but as Winifred. A woman with her own thoughts, her own history, her own future. One warm June evening, as we shared a bottle of wine, he took my hand. "Winifred," he began, his kind eyes serious. "My nephew has offered me his beach house in Pensacola for the summer. And I was hoping you would come with me." The offer hung in the air, shimmering with possibility. 3 months by the sea. A world away from Tuscaloosa. A world away from the ghosts of the house on Wisteria Lane. I'd have to think about it, I stammered, my heart fluttering like a schoolgirl's. "There's Daisy." The next time I saw Daisy, I told her about the offer. Her face lit up. "Grandma, you have to go," she insisted. "You deserve it." We can FaceTime every day, and I'll come visit. Don't you dare say no because of me." Her selfless encouragement was the final push I needed. That night, I called Orville and accepted. A week before we were due to leave, Webster asked to see me. He came to my apartment in the evening, looking thinner, more subdued. "Mom," he said, his voice quiet. "I came to apologize. No strings attached. What we did, what I allowed to happen. It was wrong. I see that now. Losing everything, it forced me to look at the man I'd become. And I was ashamed." I listened, my heart cautiously open. "I'm not asking for your forgiveness," he continued, his gaze steady. "I know I don't deserve it yet. I just wanted you to know that I'm trying to be better. For Daisy. For myself." He stood to leave. "I hope you have a wonderful time in Florida. You deserve to be happy." He gave me a brief, hesitant hug at the door, and for the first time in a very long time, it felt real. The day of our departure was bright and full of promise. Daisy and Evelyn were at the train station to see us off. To my surprise, Webster was there too, standing a little apart, offering a small, sad smile. As the train began to pull away from the station, I looked out at the faces on the platform. My granddaughter waving enthusiastically. My best friend beaming. And my son, his expression a complex mix of regret and hope. Orville reached across the aisle and took my hand. "Ready for our adventure, Winifred?" he asked, his smile warm and reassuring. I squeezed his hand, the silver orchid pendant he'd given me cool against my skin. I didn't know if my relationship with my son could ever be fully healed, or what the future held for Orville and me. But as the familiar landscape of Tuscaloosa receded, I felt not a sense of loss, but of liberation. I had learned the hardest and most important lesson of all, that self-respect is a foundation that cannot be bought or sold, and that true wealth lies not in what you give away, but in what you refuse to sacrifice. And looking at the open track ahead, I smiled. The journey was just beginning.